Can you see that it's recording?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, I could check here also. Yeah, it's recording. Then we could increase the point size. Okay, so we can begin the day with the salutation. I'll just do it one time. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened one. Okay, so good morning, everybody. And today we come to the last few sessions. I think this is the last full Dhamma talk. And so now we've completed the Mangala Sutta, all of the blessings of the Mangala Sutta, and we went through some of the other anusatis or recollections. And now we come to another important practice within the Buddhist tradition, in all of the Buddhist traditions. And these are what are called paramis and also paramitas. And what's a little bit peculiar is that even though these practices of paramis or paramitas play such an important role in both the Southern or Theravada tradition as well as in the Northern Mahayana tradition with different formulations, but we don't find them as a set within the oldest strata of canonical texts in the Nikayas. And I don't think that they occur in the Chinese counterparts to the Nikayas from other traditions, the Agamas. But they start to appear in a later strata in the Pali canon, a later strata of texts describing the path that a future Buddha takes, a bodhisattva. And I think the first place we find them, to my knowledge, in the Pali canon, is in the story of how, in the distant past, many kalpas ago, a certain being or person came to formulate the vow or aspiration to become a Buddha in the future. And he is the one who's going to become our Buddha, the Buddha Gautama. So the story goes that many, many aeons in the past, there was a young man by the name of Sumeda, from a wealthy family, and his parents died when he was fairly young, in his maybe early 20s, and left him a lot of wealth. And then he reflected, so typical in the Buddhist tradition, what is the use of all of this wealth? I can use it to enjoy myself and have a lot of fun and enjoyment, but in the end it's just going to be old age, sickness, and death. So let me use this wealth for charitable purposes. He gives it all away to worthy causes, and he decides to go out and live the homeless life as an ascetic. And his name at that time is Sumeda, just like the Achan Sumedo, the American monk in England. So he becomes the ascetic Sumeda, and he is practicing meditation in a cave on the mountainside, and apparently he has good accumulations from his earlier life, so he quickly attains the jhanas, the higher meditative attainments, the capacity for supernormal powers, and so on. And then one day he's going out for his alms round in the village or to the town or city. There's a city nearby, and he sees that there's a lot of banners being flown and flags are flying, the city has been decorated, and people are preparing the road, smoothing out the muddy road. And he asks, what is going on? What's happening? And the people tell him, haven't you heard? The Buddha, you see, there are in earlier aeons, there are Buddhas that arise, accompanied by their own monastic sanghas. So they say, haven't you heard? The Buddha Dipankara is coming to our city today, and we are decorating the city and preparing the road for him. And so he thinks, can I do something to also contribute to prepare the way for the Buddha Dipankara when he comes? And they point out, here is a stretch towards at the far end of the city, maybe outside the city. There's a stretch of muddy road. Start clearing away the mud, spread sand on it, and smooth it out. And as the ascetic Sumeda is preparing the road, he looks up, and what does he see? The Buddha is walking down the road, accompanied by all of his monks, but the road is still muddy. And so Sumeda thinks, what am I going to do? I don't want the Buddha to get his feet muddy. So Sumeda spreads his own body, lies down over the muddy patch of the road, and he looks up and he implores the Buddha, please step over my body and cross the muddy portion of the road. Okay, so the Buddha comes up and he looks down, and as the Buddha has come very close to Sumeda, Sumeda thinks, if I wanted to, right now I could listen to the Buddha's instruction and become an arahat on the spot. But he's so impressed by the glory and splendor of the Buddha that he formulates in his mind the aspiration, the wish, may I become a Buddha in the future. And then the Buddha looks down at Sumeda, and since the Buddha can read his mind, he knows this ascetic now who's lying prostrate in the mud has formulated the aspiration to become a Buddha in the future. Will he succeed or not? And then as that question comes to his mind, he realizes in the future, something like 4 incalculables and 100,000 great aeons in the future, this ascetic will become a Buddha by the name of Gautama, which is also known as Shakyamuni, and his chief disciples will be Sariputta, Moggallana, and he will dwell, I don't remember all the other details. And then the Buddha doesn't walk over his body, but the Buddha just walks around it and instructs the monks. He says, don't walk over this ascetic. He's going to become a Buddha in the future. And then they all walk together and they enter the city. I think it was called Hangsavati was the name of the city. And then after he gets this prediction, this is the important phase called the prediction, where the aspiring bodhisattva gets the prediction of future success. So Sumeda is still sitting there and contemplating, and the question comes to his mind, what are the qualities that I have to perfect in order to become a Buddha? And as he reflects in that way, this is in the Theravada tradition, the 10 paramis or paramitas come to his mind, and he goes through them one after another. And so within the Theravada tradition, we have the set of 10, they're called both paramis and paramitas. In the texts of the Mahayana tradition, even probably the earliest stratum of texts, at least even the 8,000 line Prajnaparamita Sutra, we already have a set of 6 paramitas. And so it's a question, how did the concept of paramitas arise? Who developed them first? I don't know, Venerable Yinchen, I think, has explored that in his big volume. if I remember, he speaks about how different schools, this is like in the pre-Mahayana phase, between the earliest period of Buddhism and the emergence of the Mahayana, the Buddhist community is broken up into different schools, and they're basing their understanding of the path of a future Buddha on the Jataka stories, the stories about the Buddha's past lives. And on this basis, they're formulating different concepts about the qualities that the Bodhisattva fulfills in his previous lives in order to become a Buddha. And so that becomes the idea of the paramitas, which in the Mahayana becomes systematized in a set of 6 paramitas. And we're going to take both of them in the half hour that remains to us. But what's interesting, you see, in the Theravada tradition, though the concept of the paramis or paramitas originally arises in relation to the path that a future Buddha, a Bodhisattva, has to take to achieve Buddhahood, but as time goes on, the idea emerges that all aspirants for liberation, whether as a perfectly enlightened Buddha, the solitary Buddha or Pacceka Buddha, or an Arahant disciple, should fulfill to a certain degree these qualities, the qualities embedded or embodied in the paramitas. And we find actually pretty much all the paramitas in the oldest canonical texts, but not as a set, not as an organized set. And so the idea appears, some of the commentaries, the Pali commentaries say, to become a fully enlightened Buddha, a Sammasambuddha, you have to fulfill the paramitas over 4 incalculable aeons and 100,000 great aeons. To become a solitary Buddha, Pacceka Buddha, I think it's 2 incalculable aeons. To become a chief disciple of the Buddha, if there's any experts here, forgive me if I'm a little inaccurate in my recollection, it might be 1 incalculable aeon, or maybe it's 100,000 great aeons, and then according to one's aspiration, the number goes down. We don't have to be concerned with these numbers so much, but just to know what are these qualities, and these are the qualities. It says you are muted. Oh, now it's gone. So what's important to know and to understand that these are qualities that we should try to embody and incorporate into our everyday lives as followers of the Buddha's teaching. And so I've gone through I've listed the 10 first I have the 10 paramitas of the Theravada tradition, and then the 6 paramitas of the Northern Mahayana tradition. There's an overlap between, I think, 4 or 5 of them, as we'll see. And so it starts off with the perfection of giving or generosity. And so the ideal is, and what makes the paramita special? You see, there's a lot of correspondence, close correspondence between the paramitas and the practices for acquiring merit. But what makes the paramita, what distinguishes them from the basis of merit, is that when you do meritorious deeds, you often do so with a wish, may I gain the benefits that come from these meritorious deeds. But for that same quality to become the paramita, you practice them without any clinging to the idea of results to be obtained from them. Any kind of mundane or worldly results. You do them solely for the purpose that they will culminate in the supramundane or the world-transcending attainment. And even that you do without clinging to them. And it says, without clinging, conceit, and wrong views. So you practice them without clinging to any personal results that might be obtained from them, without building up conceit, because I practice this, I'm so wonderful and excellent, and without like the wrong view of a self based upon them. And so the practice of giving, you aspire to be generous, and we have many types of giving. You start off in the simplest way with the giving of material things, giving food to those who are hungry, could be the offerings to the Sangha, offering food, medicines, robes, supporting the monastery, giving to those, as I mentioned yesterday, there's 3 fields of giving: the field of respect or reverence, the field of gratitude, parents, teachers, elders, benefactors, and the field of compassion, helping those who are suffering. And giving beyond giving, external material things, a good way to perfect the paramita of giving, if you're young and healthy, is to give blood, make donations of blood. And sometimes when there are blood donations, they'll offer some reward, but you reject the reward. If they offer payment, you don't accept the payment. I remember I used to give blood before I had anemia. Then they would you accept a little cup of, I think afterwards they give you a cup of apple juice that you can accept. No, because it gives more energy. And you can also, what would be really very, very high kind of paramita of giving, there's a little card, you can have it maybe on your driving license and on some hospital forms. When you die, do you want to be an organ donor? You can say yes. And that's really, you just have to check that little box and your paramita rating sort of jumps up. And then the idea is that you give with a heart free from the taint of selfishness, full of kindness and compassion. But also, when giving, you also have to give with some discretion, not sort of exposing yourself, making yourself vulnerable to extreme losses. You have to do it with a sense of balance. Some people sometimes go to extremes of giving, and then they find themselves in trouble and then have to beg and plead with others to help them. So you want to give in the balanced way. I think if you remember, the Buddha says that in the way he formulates it back in ancient India, I think it's like 1/4 of one's income one devotes to charitable purposes. But today maybe that's too high. It depends on your standard, on your income, your resources, but you allocate a certain amount to charitable purposes. And also, it's useful to give things directly rather than just making monetary donations, but you can also give things directly when the opportunity arises. And with respect to giving, by the way, I put some folders up here about the organization that I helped to establish, Buddhist Global Relief. We provide hunger relief to poor communities all around the world, from Mongolia through Cambodia, Vietnam, India, Sri Lanka, several countries in Africa, Malawi, Somalia, Ethiopia, Uganda, through Latin America and the United States. You can take a folder or look at the website of Buddhist Global Relief. I don't want to do an advertisement, but I think it's a very worthy organization. Okay, so this will be giving, so we really have a lot of material to cover. Then we come to this, and I think the list of paramitas always begins with giving, maybe because when you see in the suttas, when the Buddha gives a Dhamma talk to a newcomer, it says that he begins with dana kata, sila kata, then sagga kata. So he begins with a talk. In his talk, he begins with giving, with generosity, then moves on to sila, that is observing precepts or the principles of good behavior. And so now we come to the sila parami, the perfection of virtue or of virtuous conduct. And so this applies especially to one's actions of body and speech, but they're also, the bodies and speech express states of mind. And so the aspiration is for one's actions of body, speech, and mind to be pure and clean and not to be sort of defiled by breaches or blemishes. And then one wants one's conduct always to be sincere and upright so that you can serve as a model for the world. You don't have to make announcements, go on television, or promote yourself over Facebook or Instagram, whatever. But just when you really embody in your behavior these principles of good conduct through the 5 precepts, if you're a monastic, through the monastic precepts, just by your deportment, people will pick up what do you call the vibrations and look up to you, respect you, admire you, and take you as a model through your conduct. Okay, then we'll come to the 3rd paramita, or parami, and this one is in the Theravadan version, but it's not in the 6 paramitas of the Mahayana. Maybe some say because the Theravada had a bias towards monasticism. I'm not sure that that's the case because the Mahayana also sort of unfolded in monastic communities. But anyway, so here I have, so the aspiration is to be able to renounce the worldly life and go forth into the homeless life to lead the pure brahmacharya. But then the commentary on the paramitas explains that renunciation here is not only the outer act of, renouncing the household life to go into homelessness, but it's also the inner renunciation of the hindrances of the mind in order to be able to enter into the meditative absorptions, the jhanas and the other stages of samadhi. So even if one is living the household life, I would say undertaking the practice of meditation then becomes a way of developing renunciation. Okay, then we come to the paramita of energy. Maybe you say perfection is the high point, but we begin with our imperfections, and gradually we build up these qualities till they become perfections. And so one wishes through energy or virya to be filled, this is the high point, inexhaustible energy, vigor and fortitude, but let us just say devoting some time and effort to cultivating, on the one hand, the path to enlightenment, but also to work for the benefit of others. So we have energy working in both directions, inwardly in our own personal cultivation and outwardly in doing things that will be of benefit to others. Then we come to next the perfection of patience, extremely important especially in the household life, but also monastic life. And so here the ideal is to be, I would like distinguish 2 aspects of patience, or even 3 aspects of patience. I think I dealt with this in a recent class on Saturday, 3 aspects of patience. First, there's patience with outer circumstances. It's very hot, you don't like the heat. Too cold, you don't like the cold. There are flies and mosquitoes, you don't like flies and mosquitoes. Too much noise outside. Too quiet, I need a little noise. So those are some of the circumstances that one has to deal with. But then that's one type of patience with outer, let us say, physical circumstances. Then the second domain of patience is with things that happen to the body, particularly when there's pain and illness. One has to be able to endure illness and pain patiently. Of course, you take the appropriate remedies, go to a doctor when necessary, or take any kind of medicine that you need, but when there's pain coming through the body, one should be able to endure it. The ideal is to endure it patiently. I remember there was a little incident in the life of the Tibetan yogi Milarepa. There was some other Lama who was very jealous of Milarepa and gave him some poison. Of course, he didn't like, Milarepa was a very profound meditator, and this Lama was just intent on worldly gains, and everybody was respecting Milarepa, neglecting him. So he wanted to wipe Milarepa off the scene, so he invited him to come for a meal and offered him a drink mixed with poison. And Milarepa, maybe he knew that there was poison there, but he felt that obliged to take that drink, so he drank it, went back to his abode, and then he became afflicted with extreme pain. He's approaching his death. And the Lama who gave him that poison realized that he was poisoning a saintly being. So he came to Milarepa and said, "Please, please forgive me. Let me endure your pain." And Milarepa said, "No, I won't give you that pain. It's too intense, you won't be able to endure it." And the Lama said, "I can endure it, give it to me." And Milarepa said, "I'm going to show you what that pain is like. I'm going to transpose it from my body to the door of my room and see what happens." So Milarepa makes that mental determination, and then the door starts to stretch and expand until the door shatters into 100 pieces. Anyway, that's an extreme example, maybe partly legendary, but one should be able to endure pain. And when there is pain, you should tell others, if you need some help. Don't think that you have to endure it silently. So this is patience with afflictions of the body. And the third type of patience, which is the most challenging, even more than severe illness, patience with other people. Even in the family relationship, parents have to be patient with their children, children with their patients, husband with the wife, wife with the children. Okay, so this is patience under all circumstances, external or in the body, and towards other people. One should be forbearing and forgiving, even those who abuse you. Of course, if there are people who are abusive, who are exploiting you, you should avoid them. When you have to report it, you report it to authorities. But you don't give rise, ideally, you don't give rise to hatred and resentment. Okay, then we come to the perfection of truthfulness. Oh, did I skip over the perfection of wisdom? Oh, how did I do that? Oh, I know why, because I reorganized the sequence in the Theravada tradition, since it seemed to me a little bit disorderly. In the Theravada text, they have the perfection of wisdom comes fourth, which didn't make sense to me, so I changed the sequence. Don't tell the authorities in Burma. Okay, so perfection of truthfulness. So this is, again, I have to qualify this. Here it says, always speaking the truth. But this is speaking the truth on the situations where truthfulness is important. As I said, when there are these little lies of convenience, we could say, not for your own advantage, but to avoid friction, hurting the feelings of others, creating disharmony in the group. But the kind of truth that you want to be deeply committed to, not to speak any falsehood that's going to be deliberately harmful to others, create divisions and conflict in a group, or that will get some unfair advantage for yourself. And so when you make this commitment to truth, then you win the confidence and trust of others. Okay, and then comes seventh is the perfection of determination. So this is forming a firm determination, well, let us say, to continue to follow the way, the Buddhist path in this life, but it's good to make that determination to follow the Buddha's path in life after life, because that establishes what we may call a connection to the Buddha's teaching. So no matter where you're born, reborn, somehow conditions will manifest so that you meet the Buddha's teaching. So here I'm born in Brooklyn, the age of 20, 21, browsing in the Brooklyn College bookshop, some books on Buddhism. This might be interesting. And then some years later, here I am with the robe of a Buddhist monk. My friend Bhante Buddharakkhita, born in Uganda, he goes to India to study business administration. And while he's there, walking down a city street, a couple of Thai monks come walking down. And then a few years later, he's ordained as a Buddhist monk and establishing a Buddhist center in Uganda. So when you form that determination, that becomes sort of the tie that connects you to the Buddha's teaching in life after life. And you do that through the taking of the refuge. When you take the refuge day after day, that sense of refuge will become the connecting tie to the Buddha's teaching. Okay, then from determination we come to loving kindness. So this is the aspiration to develop the mind of boundless loving kindness and of great compassion. So when metta is mentioned, it also sort of entails compassion, the wish to alleviate the suffering of others. And then I think in the order that I wanted, maybe I put the perfection of wisdom. It seems to me wisdom should then come ninth, and equanimity should be the fruit of wisdom. So we'll go to wisdom here. And this is a little bit ornate. May my wisdom grow as vast as space, as deep as the ocean, as luminous as the sun, dispelling the darkness of ignorance and illuminating the true nature of things. So that is the aspiration, but we have to proceed methodically and systematically to study, reflection, and especially the development of insight meditation, to develop wisdom. And then one of the fruits of wisdom is that wisdom will bring growing equanimity. And so the aspiration is to develop a mind of, this is the high point of perfect equanimity, a mind that is impartial towards others without biases or preferences, and then the mind of equanimity that can't be shaken by the worldly opposites, the 8 worldly winds, gain and loss, fame and obscurity, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. Yeah, there's a big session for questions I saw on the schedule. So I'll try to finish the paramis in this period. Yeah, then after the refuge ceremony, then we have a period for questions and discussion. So any questions that come up relating to the paramis, we could take them in that discussion period. Okay, so we have equanimity, impartiality towards others, not having favoritism, I like these, I don't like those people. And then the equanimity in face of external conditions, the mind that can't be shaken. So these are the 10 paramis or paramitas in the southern tradition. And then we have the 6 paramitas of the northern tradition. Perhaps they emerged in one of the schools that was the sort of forerunner of the Mahayana, but they become, clearly and systematically articulated, even in the early versions of the Prajnaparamita Sutras. So actually, there's not that much to say, because you could see that 5 of them have a place in the Theravada scheme. So we have giving, virtue, patience, and energy, and then wisdom, and the one which is distinct in the Mahayana scheme is the dhyana paramita, which dhyana would correspond to Pali jhana, but it's understood the way it's explained, not just attaining the meditative absorptions, but being devoted to the practice of meditation as such, and then enjoying the bliss and peace of samadhi. But again, if one is on the bodhisattva path, without clinging to that bliss of samadhi, because one wants to move on to the perfection of wisdom. And in the early Mahayana sutras, one sometimes finds that the 6 paramitas are followed by or connected with the 4 immeasurable minds, also called the Brahmaviharas. So this would be boundless loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy. This is rejoicing in the success, achievements, good qualities, and good fortune of others. And then equanimity, which as a Brahmavihara is the equanimity towards sentient beings, not having preferences and biases, but being able to look, whether people are friendly or hostile, one looks upon them the same. So it seems that when you compare the list of the 2 lists of the paramitas, each one has its distinct advantage. So what I say, the Theravadan list, because it has 10 paramitas, has maybe more qualities of character that are to be developed. So we have truthfulness, determination, explicitly loving kindness and equanimity. So in that way it's somewhat fuller, but the 6 paramitas of the Mahayana, early Mahayana tradition, I say has a more logical sequence, in that we have giving rise to virtue, then patience and energy. Interestingly, their position is reversed in the two lists. And I think this is where it's more logical in the Mahayana tradition, that giving, virtuous conduct, and patience deal with one's relationship to others, modes or means of benefiting others. Meditation and wisdom deal with internal cultivation, developing oneself, and then energy comes in between because it applies to both domains, the domain of externally benefiting others, internally cultivating and developing one's inner faculties. I had another list that I was going to bring forward, but it's too much. You'll get the file and you can look at it in the file, but we won't try to go into. But actually, maybe just mention the factors on this list without elaboration. And these are called the 4 Sangaha Vatu. We find them in the Pali Suttas, but then they also get absorbed into the Mahayana Sutras and in the elaborations of the bodhisattva path because they're very important qualities for bodhisattva aspirants to develop. These are, sangaha means drawing in, drawing, especially in this context, towards oneself, attracting people to oneself and then sustaining a healthy relationship to them. And so the four means, we've already covered the basic principles. One is giving gifts. When you give gifts to people, then they become favorably disposed to you and become friendly towards you. The second means is pleasant speech, polite, cordial. How are you? How is your family? Are you keeping good health? And so on. When you have pleasant speech, others will become attracted to you. Then beneficial conduct, doing various, whatever activity will be helpful and beneficial to others. And then the fourth is impartiality, or could also be understood as equality of treatment, cooperating with others, collaborating with others, treating others the same as yourself and treating everyone the same. Okay, maybe we can take a break and then we'll come back at 10 o'clock and then we'll do the going for refuge and precept ceremony. And we'll have to do it in 2 rounds because there are people online that want to do it and people want to do it in person. We'll be doing it on that side of the hall, and the people who are taking the refuges and precepts will be in the front rows, and the other people can be behind them. And those people who are doing it, some people have done it previously, but want to do it again. But let the people who are doing it for the first time be in the front rows. People who are repeating could be behind them, and people who are not doing it, who have already done it in the past, can be behind them. Okay, so let us take our break and we'll come back at 10 o'clock. Okay, so for the people online, there's been a change of plan. Oops. We were originally going to do 2 times, 2 cycles, one for the people present in the hall, and then another time for the people online, but we realized it can be done easily, everybody at the same time, just that the people online should be sure that you have your microphones turned off, so that because the voices will come when you're repeating what I say, because if there's difference in the speed of transmission, then there would be just a cacophony, a chaos of sound. So keep your microphones off, but you recite to yourself. Or if you have a friend or family member and present, you could be reciting it with them present. Okay, so ready? We will begin. We'll do 3 full bows to the Buddha.
Half bow. First bow. Rise. Second bow. Rise. Third bow. Rise. Half bow. Bow to Bande.
Okay, we.
Could you say it again to people online that we're doing it together, just in case some people came in late?
Okay, we just did 3 bows, so those who might be taking the Refuges and Precepts online, if you haven't done 3 bows in your home, you can do 3 bows. And let's see. Oops. Heinz, you said that you were taking it, that you had already taken. But you're in the row with some people who are taking it. Are you taking it for the first time? Yeah, so you can move to... Andrew, are you taking it again? Yes, I am. Okay, so you would be in the 3rd row then. Are you doing it a second time? Oh, wait. And Heather, you can sit here, and then the people who are doing it a second time can sit in the 2nd row. Or if you're comfortable there, it doesn't matter. Okay, so we'll join the palms together, and then we'll recite 3 times. I'll recite, and then you recite after me. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so now the first step is a kind of sort of like clearing the weeds out of the field by doing a general repentance for all of our past wrongdoing or our transgressions in this beginningless samsara. And so we keep the hands folded or joined together, and you recite, I'll recite in English, and then you recite line by line. All the evil karma ever committed by me in the past, on account of beginningless greed, hatred, and delusion, occurring through body, speech, and mind, I hereby confess and repent it all. Yeah, we do it 3 times. All the evil karma ever committed by me in the past, on account of beginningless greed, hatred, and delusion, occurring through body, speech, and mind, I hereby confess and repent it all. All the evil karma ever committed by me in the past, on account of beginningless greed, hatred, and delusion, occurring through body, speech, and mind, I hereby confess and repent it all. Okay, now we'll be doing the going for refuge. And so we take the refuge and the 3 jewels, the 3 gems, and I just notice that there's some typographical error here, in that you see Dhammang Saranang, the words are joined, but they're separate words. So just understand that there's a space between them. And we'll do it in both languages, both in English, first in Pali and then in English. Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I go for refuge to the Buddha. Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. I go for refuge to the Dhamma. Sangham Saranam Gacchami. I go for refuge to the Sangha. And now we do it a second time. Dudiyampi Buddham Saranam Gacchami. A second time I go for refuge to the Buddha. Dudiyampi Dhamma. Dudiyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. A second time, I go for refuge to the Dhamma. Dudiyampi Sangham Saranam Gacchami. A second time, I go for refuge to the Sangha. Then the third time, Tatiyampi Buddham Saranam Gacchami. A third time, I go for refuge to the Buddha. Tatiyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. A third time, I go for refuge to the Dhamma. Tatiyampi Sangam Saranam Gacchami. A third time, I go for refuge to the Sangha. And so now I say, Sarana Gamanam Sampunang, which means now the going for refuge is completed. And then you just say, Amabante, or yes, Venerable. Okay, so now you've become formally lay followers of the Buddha. And now following the tradition, we do the 5 precepts. So this is, as you know, this is the basic ethical code to be observed by a Buddhist lay follower. Let's do the Pali first. I break it down into phrases, and then we'll do the English after the Pali. Panati pata veramani Sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training rule to abstain from taking life. Adina dana veramani. Sikapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training rule to abstain from taking what is not given, which really means from stealing or misappropriating the belongings of others. Number 3, I undertake, we'll do the Pali, kamesu michachara veramani Sikapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the training rule to abstain from sexual misconduct. Number 4, musavada veramani Sikapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the training rule to abstain from false speech. Number 5, we'll break this into more sections. Sura Meriya Majja Pamada Tana Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the training rule to abstain from wines, liquors, and other intoxicants, the basis for heedlessness. And so now I say, Ti saranena saha panchasilang dhammang sadhukang surakitang katva appamadena sampadeta, which means now you have taken the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts, preserving them carefully, strive on with diligence, and then you say amabant, which means just yes, Venerable. And so now we've finished the transmission of the refuges and the precepts. And now we consider that when you do this little ritual or rite, it's considered an extremely wholesome or meritorious deed. And so now we want to share the merits with other beings. And so you could sit sort of in a comfortable, doesn't have to be a very formal meditation position. And you close the eyes, and you could think of any of your past relatives, especially those who have passed away, and other relatives living, that you want to share the merits with. And also we think about the devas, the Dhamma protecting devas and other beings. And just for a couple of minutes, now your mind will be full of joy at having taken the refuges and the precepts, and now you invite these other beings to rejoice in your wholesome actions of taking the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. You continue to send out those thoughts of metta to them, and then I'll recite the verses in Pali for the sharing of the merits. Akasata cha bhumata deva naga mahidika punyanta manumoditva chirangra kantu sasanam. Akasata cha bhumata Deva naga mahidika punyanta manumoditva chirangra kantu desanam. Akasata cha bhumata Deva naga mahidika punyanta manumoditva chirangra kantu tang sada. Etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang Sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang Sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya bhavagupadaya vici hetato etantare satakai upapanna rupya rupicha sanya sanyino dukkha pamuchantu pusantu nibuting. Okay, so that concludes the formal part of the ceremony. Then we're supposed to give Dhamma names. Oh, there are some new ones. Yeah. Okay, put this. Maybe I need a pen. I think there's a... I don't want somebody to get a name that they don't like, so sometimes I give 2 alternatives. And please don't think that I'm sort of reading the hidden dispositions of your mind and giving the name on that basis. But what I do is base on part of at least some sound similarity in either the first name or the family name, and then base the name on that. Like the first German monk, Jnanatiloka, with his disciples, used to give them the name based on part of their personal name or family name. Okay, so my teacher was his pupil, Jnanaponika. So Jnanaponika's name in Germany was Sigmund Feniger. So you see, there's no F sound in Pali, so when he came to Sri Lanka, we had Fenica, then it would become the closest letter to it would be P, Panika, and so he called him, sort of that lineage name was Jnana, but based on Fenica, turns to Penica, then the closest Pali word is Ponika, which means inclined to or flowing towards. So Jnana Ponika is inclined to the higher knowledge or wisdom, flowing towards knowledge. And then there was another German man who came over. The German word for field, is it Feld? Okay, so Schoenfeld, that was the name, Schoenfeld. So he based on that part field, to give him the Pali name Jnana Keta, field of knowledge. Okay, so I thought that I had written on the form, the first one to come up is Megan Ferry. So you can get, two, I thought that I wrote the choices out, or maybe I just had them in my mind. Did you fill out a form yesterday?
But I handed it to you.
Excuse me?
But I handed the form to you this morning.
Oh,
But we were on the clipboard, the list.
yeah. Anyway, you could have the choice. So Megan naturally suggests there's a word megi. You see, there's a noun mega, which means cloud, and then megia would be relating to a cloud. It's a good name. Or the other thing, peri, or ferry, so we don't have the F sound, so it becomes peri, and so it can become parami, whichever one you prefer, either megia or parami.
I have to decide now. Yes, I tell you now.
Yeah. You could think about it and come back later. Okay, then the next on this list is use, and your family name is, I don't know how to pronounce it, it's NG. Ung?
Actually, it's Nadiman, but I abbreviated it to NG. So actually, Nadiman.
Okay, but I just saw NG, so naturally what came to mind is the word Naga, and then derived from Naga is Nagita, and Nagita was a monk who was, for a certain period, he was the personal attendant to the Buddha, so you could have the name Nagita based on NG. I know in Singapore, Chinese people have the last name NG, which is always a challenge for pronunciation, but I think it's pronounced Ung. Okay, so you could have the name Nagita. Which is sort of related to the Nagas. And the Nagas, or at least the class of Nagas, are Dhamma protectors, so you should become a Dhamma protector. Okay, Heinz, again you have a choice. See, there aren't so many good words with H in Pali, but I came up with Hemaka is one. Hemaka was a young Brahmin who came to visit the Buddha and asked questions of him. He's part of, in the Sutta Nipata, the last book, the Parayana Vagga, he's one of those 16 young Brahmins who came to question the Buddha. So one choice is Hemaka, and since your last name is Maya, so then we get Megiya, the masculine form. So you choose which one you like, if you want to think about it.
Yeah, I think I go with the first.
The first one, Hemaka. Okay. It seems actually the name Hemaka seems to be related to the idea of snow. You know, the Himalaya mountains are called the Himalaya. So Hema is snow and Alaya is abode of snow. So Hemaka, the word seems to be derived from snow, but the actual person Hemaka was one of these young Brahmins in the last book of the Sutta Nipata. Okay, next is Evan Riley. Okay, so not many names beginning with E in Pali, but Riley brings up the resonance of Rahula. Rahula was the Buddha's son, biological son.
Fetter. Shackles. Fetter.
I don't know if that really resonates so much. I know that it's said that Rahula is a fetter, but the resonance that it has is the Buddha's personal son. So if you're happy with that, okay, so we give Rahula. I mean, it's a good name because there are quite a number of eminent monks with the name Rahula. Famous one who wrote a book called What the Buddha Taught. That's Walpala Rahula. And then there's an American monk near Washington, D.C., elder monk, Yoga Vajra Rahula. And,
Wasn't a criticism.
excuse me?
I said I wasn't a criticism. I just
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so it's
very happy. Thank you.
then Denise Guzman. Oh, you're Denise. Okay, so I came up with, based on Denise, I came up with Sudina. It means well given. It's a nice name. Or Sugandha, it means like fragrant, having the good fragrance. So whichever one you like. Sugandha. And I think the verse in the Dhammapada, it says, the fragrance of various flowers and perfumes doesn't go against the wind, but the fragrance of virtue, of sila, spreads in all directions. So this is the fragrance of virtue. Okay, then Heather. Okay, so again, there aren't so many good choices with H, but from the last name, Thomas, I came up with Tusita. Tusita means joyful, glad, contented, and it's also the name of one of the heavenly realms. It's the heavenly realm where bodhisattvas dwell before they come down to earth for their last life. So that's one option, Tusita or Tomita, sort of related to Thomas. Tomita means praised, extolled. So, Tusita, okay. Okay, then Eric Rabe. Okay, so I just came up with the name Revata. Revata he was one of the prominent monks. You don't have to become a monk. But he was one of the prominent monks in the Buddha's circle of disciples. And if you go down that path with the statues of the Arahats, 1, 2, 3, he might be third or fourth on the right-hand side going down. You'll see his statue. I think he was the one who is outstanding as a meditator, or maybe the outstanding of those who prefer to dwell in quiet places, something like that. Oops. Meghiya or Parami, and if you don't like either of them, we could try.
I like them both. I really don't know.
I would say flip a coin, but I don't have a coin. Okay. Yeah, I think I like Parami. Oops. No, we've already decided on Parami. It sets a very high standard, Parami. Okay, there are a couple of new ones. Oh, I did get I did have this last night. I got up early this morning to start looking through the dictionary. There's a dictionary of Pali proper names, putting in first letters and then looking for suitable names. So there's Chun Li, but she goes by the name Lily. So I was thinking there's a word Malika. Malika means a jasmine flower. And it was also the name of the the chief wife, the queen of King Pasenadi of Kosala. So Malika is a good name, and it's yeah, the reason I thought Malika, you see, lily, it's a beautiful, fragrant flower, but I couldn't find a Pali equivalent for it. So then I looked up jasmine, which is a common flower in Asian countries, and then I got Malika as the equivalent. Okay, then for James Payne, okay, I based on the pain part, and I came up with the word pandita. Pandita means a wise person, a learned person. But if you don't like it, because now the word pundit is used almost in you see, the common word absorbed into English, pundit, usually like some commentator on worldly events. We turn to the pundits are talking about what's going on, who's ahead in the polls and the elections. So if you don't like that, we could try to come up with something else. But there's like a number of eminent monks named Pandita, particularly a late Burmese meditation master, U Pandita Soyador. So I think I got everybody. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, so you submitted the form this morning. So Alice Yiwen Zhang. You'll be here this afternoon? Because then I'll have a chance to go back and I can consult my dictionary of Pali proper names. Because my mind is a little sluggish now. Yeah, the Chinese names Yi1 and Zhang, hard to come up with Pali equivalents to that, but based on Alice, I'm sure we could find something, I just have to look into it. Oh, I think we have the internet here, I could get it right off. But let's get on, because we're supposed to have a period with some more discussion. So we'll hold this. And then Jason is going to take this and he'll make up, probably you'll get this in the mail, or maybe in the afternoon if they could do it, these certificates. And then I have to sign them, so that takes a little time. So I think I had a name. Oh, these are people online. It's just too much. There's about 20. I can't think of. So please, the people who are online, if you come to the monastery in person, then I'll try to come up with Pali names. The other alternative, I remember in the Lotus Sutra, when the Buddha is giving a prediction, I think like a group of 500, he says, in the future, they will all become Buddhas by the name of, let's say, Chandaloka, the light of the moon. So I could say, all of the males on the list get the name Ananda, all the females on the list can get the name Nanda, but maybe they won't be satisfied with that. But Vandana, are you there?
Yes, Bhante.
Your name Vandana, it's already a good Pali name.
Yes, and my parents gave me when I was a Hindu when I was born. So I didn't know that it's a Pali name, but now I know.
Yeah, Vandana is veneration. Okay, I'll have to give some thought to these names. Okay, so let us see what we have next on the schedule. Yeah, we could have a continuing discussion period for about a half an hour, sort of any questions that have come up. Should we do it on that side? Is that more comfortable? Yeah. Did I miss anybody for the naming? Everybody got their Buddhist names? Okay, so we can move over to the other side. Okay, you could just take the cup over there. Yeah, you take this. Wait. You take this, and I'll keep this. This I have to not decided yet. Okay. Okay, so this is a kind of open question period. So any questions that came up about either the paramis, paramitas, or anything covered over the past few days? Yeah, please feel welcome to ask. And also have to bear in mind, people online might have questions, but we start off with people in the hall. And so what do I do?
Zoom.
Okay.
Zoom, yeah. Oh, I can do it for you. Let me answer questions. Oh, you're already in.
We're on Zoom already.
Good, thank you.
And there's no screen to share. Do I record this?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Unless you want to. Do you want to record it?
Maybe this doesn't have to be recorded. So you could ask more sensitive questions. Okay.
The other day you were talking about this quality of becoming amenable to advice, taking correction. And when you were talking about that, I was thinking about, well, being educated in the Western tradition, just thinking about the ego and how we can stop clinging to our ego and to sort of boosting the ego. So I'm pretty new to Buddhism, so this is kind of a beginner's question. Can you talk a little bit about the psychology in Buddhism in terms of, like, is there an equivalent to the ego? Is that the self, or is the self kind of broken up into more parts? Like, specifically, what are some strategies for reducing the power of what, like in the West, we would call the ego?
Yeah, that what we call ego here, and I think this is not using the word ego in this sense of Freudian psychology, and not using the word ego in the sense of the theoretical idea of the self, but this is more what I would say the Buddhist equivalent with of that sense of ego is conceit, or conceit, arrogance, self-love. Sometimes they speak about 3 modes of the sense of self. Let us see. One is selfish craving, the desire to get more for yourself. Another is the conceit, the inflated sense of oneself. And the third is the theoretical view of a substantial ego entity. That's the Atman. Okay, but your question pertains to the ego in the sense of the self. And this is like an important part of Buddha's training, particularly within the monastic life, because we naturally have this strong inherent sense of our own self-importance, our self-righteousness, our own the wish to be number one. And Buddhism, in the training, the proper approach is not to sort of strike down that sense of self aggressively or forcefully, but one has to be willing to accept guidance and advice from elders. And so even in the Vinaya, the code of discipline, a newly ordained bhikkhu, or bhikkhuni, for a bhikkhu, it's 5 years living under the guidance of a senior monk. For a bhikkhuni, it's 3 years because they spend 2 years as a trainee, kind of like a novice, as preparation for bhikkhuni ordination. So 2 years as a trainee, then 3 years of dependence as a bhikkhuni. So altogether for both, it's like 5 years in dependence, where it really develops a strong sense of solidarity within the order, that the junior monastic is supposed to serve the elders the way they serve, like say, the tea here, in fact, if you look in the Vinaya, there's a whole list of detailed duties of the junior, the pupil to the teacher. They're supposed to sweep out, come to make the elder's bed, to clean out, maybe to do the laundry for the elder, to sweep the room, And all of that helps to develop a sense of humility and of service to others. And one of the responsibilities of the elder is to look for the faults and shortcomings of the junior and to point them out and correct them. But interestingly, this is an important point. Also, the Vinaya says, if the junior, the pupil, sees any faults in the senior, he should respectfully point them out. So the process works both ways. It's not that the senior or the teacher can always correct the junior, and the junior just has to remain silent. But if the junior or the pupil sees any faults on the part of the teacher, he can also point them out.
Thank you, Bhante.
And so when you come to live or stay at a well-regulated monastery or participate in events at that monastery, people are very impressed by the way, especially the way the junior monastics will look after the seniors and help them in many ways. And it helps to really bring down that sense of self-importance or ego. Okay, I see over here, this is Tej or Tejo.
No, Budhaya Bhante. I have a question that when we send loving kindness in upward direction to Devas and Nagas, so who these Nagas are? Because in Indian language, Naga means cobra.
Oh, okay.
But there is another part to it that during Buddha's time, there was no caste system in India, but there were clans like Shaka clan, Kolya clan, Naga clan. So there were 5 Nagas, Naga kings, those who were the protectors of Buddha and Buddha's Sangha. And I don't know if you've seen a statue of a Buddha with the 5 Naga head on him. So is there any difference or those are the same?
Okay, so the word Naga is used in the Buddhist texts. Let me just see how many ways. 1, 2, at least 4 ways that I'm aware of offhand. Okay, one way, the Naga is, as you said, a cobra. So the snake is, you know what the cobra is with the hood, that's called a Naga. And even in Sinhalese today, it's called Naya. Naya is a derivation of the word Naga. A second usage of Naga is a bull elephant, the big bull elephant, especially a tusker with tusks. A third usage is a class of beings, sort of semi-divine beings, not quite devas, almost related to the devas, and these are like powerful beings dwelling, some are said to be dwelling close to the earth, others dwelling in a region of one of the heavenly realms. Yeah, so those are the beings when we go Akasa, Tacha, Bhuma, Ta, Deva, Naga, Mahidika, then it's referring to these supernatural beings, Nagas, and at least some of the Nagas are protectors of the Buddha's teaching, and so we share the merits with them as a way of inducing them to protect the Buddha's teaching. And the fourth usage of Naga is to designate an arahant, especially the prominent arahats. So it seems the general sense of Naga is a powerful being, and it could be either a powerful serpent, powerful elephant, supernatural being of power, and the arahats, and maybe a class of kings, as you pointed out. Yeah, probably there was a Naga dynasty, I think. Okay, any other questions? Okay, we see Heinz. Yeah, you could take the mic. Oh, you have it already.
Yeah. So you've taught us, I'm assuming, the lay path from the Theravada perspective. Would you care to identify some of the differences for people who identify more with the Mahayana tradition? Is there a lot of overlap, or are there distinctive features to the Buddhahood path?
Okay, I'd say probably, I mean, this is like a question for a 400, 500-page volume of a sociological, doctrinal, chapter 1, doctrinal differences, chapter 2, sociological differences, chapter 3, my field work in comparative field work in Sri Lanka and Taiwan. Okay, I say first that there's a great deal of overlap, maybe excuse me, distinctive difference maybe, and this doesn't pertain only to lay people, but lay people and monastics. In the Mahayana tradition, it's common for people to sort of publicly and ceremonially take a formal bodhisattva vow and a set of precepts, which are called bodhisattva precepts, which are elaborated in several works of the Mahayana tradition. I think 2 versions used in the Chinese tradition. One version derived from the Yogacara Bhumi, and the second version from a work called the Brahmajala Sutra. And so there's a formal taking of bodhisattva vows, and to take the bodhisattva vow, the underlying intent is that you're making the formal commitment to become a fully enlightened Buddha in the future. In the Theravada tradition, I've come to know that quite a number of Theravada and serious practitioners do make a personal vow to follow the bodhisattva path, but there isn't a formal ceremony for conferring bodhisattva status or for taking bodhisattva precepts, but it's just the determination that they might make individually. And I've actually looked at the concluding verses of some of the commentators where after they write a commentary, they make a verse where they dedicate the merit. And some of them say that by the merit, that any merit that by the force of any merit I might have acquired through composing this work, may I in the future attain the supreme enlightenment and lead across, that is, lead to liberation, many sentient beings. And so they're dedicating the merit of their composition to achieving Buddhahood. Okay, but apart from that, we would say that there's a wide spectrum in both traditions that I could see relating to how, let's seriously, people take their commitment, or the particular mode in which they take their commitment to be followers of Buddhism. And this will range from simple, what we might call devotees, so those whose approach is primarily devotional, they will go to the temple or monastery to participate in the regular rituals and ceremonies. They'll provide the monastics with their requisites, but they won't, say, engage in personal Dhamma study or practice of meditation. But actually here, you know, we always think of meditation means you sit cross-legged on a mat and focus on the breath or on sensations in the body. But what's interesting is that there are types of devotional practice that sort of shade off and become meditations, like the Buddhanusati. So it will be common, say, in the Sri Lankan monastery, that they'll gather under the Bodhi tree and they'll do the recitation of the formulas for the recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and then they'll sit for a period and turn over in their mind the wordings of those formulas. And so if you're like a vipassana meditator, you say, that's not serious, they're not doing real meditation. But for them, that is actually their meditation practice. And then in the Mahayana tradition, sometimes you think real Mahayana meditation is Zen or Chan. You know, sitting in a hall, facing the wall, and somebody is walking around with a stick and hitting the shoulders. Or in the Tibetan tradition, going off for 3 years into a cave. But say within the Chinese tradition, a very popular practice, it's the Pure Land practice of reciting the name of Amitabha Buddha, Namo Amitabha, and doing it hours every day usually for 7 days. Since I've been here, I've done it almost every year. I don't aspire to be reborn in the pure land of Amitabha, but I found that it's just taking Amitabha to represent, my understanding, to represent the quintessence of Buddhahood, and so it becomes a form of devotion to the ideal of Buddhahood. Yeah, so there's that. So you could say, they're just reciting the name of Amitabha, they're not doing real meditation, but that is real meditation. And like some of these practices of the Pure Land Buddhists, usually it's the simple old lady that you see her just maybe going to market, she's twirling her mala, and she goes into her apartment, you don't know what she's doing there. But then the people don't see her for several days, and maybe they call her son, comes over, they open the door, and she's sitting there immovably, and she's gone. Maybe the mala is in the hand, and she's still sitting in the meditation posture. And often these simple lay people who do the Pure Land practice, sometimes they'll know several days in advance, like they'll say to their relatives or friends, I'm leaving in 7 days. Do you get a plane ticket? Are you going on a trip someplace? No, I mean, I'm leaving this body. And they seem they're good health, but you're in good health. How could you be passing away? They'll just say, I know, 7 days I'm gone. And the 7th day, they're gone. Okay. I've heard of quite a few cases, well, not quite a few, but some cases like that. So you think, they're just reciting, doing devotional recitation, not real meditation. But that's a real kind of meditation. Okay, any other questions here? Okay, Nakit.
I want to ask the practical application of nekama of the parami. Because usually in my meditation practice, I do the lists in order, and then when I hit nekama, which is number 3, I go, may I be selfless, but I don't know if that's correct, because it says renunciation, but then I'm not a monk, so
Yeah, no, don't have to do it in that way. You could do it, may I be selfless.
Okay.
Or even like, may I be able to serve others selflessly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, please. You're Chun Lily,
yes.
and now Marika, I think.
Thank you, Wendy. My question is that, thanks so much for your teaching on this Mangala Sutra, and notice that in your teaching, the Buddha's words, the texts you're choosing are most from the Anuttara Nikaya.
Anguttara Nikaya.
Anguttara Nikaya, and only few from the Majjhima Nikaya. And as a beginner, that also with your advice online, that I started from the Majjhima Nikaya. So is that the sequence is still good, right? It's still the sequence of study Nikaya. It's because you quoted so many that I haven't read before. So then I think that maybe move on to Anuttara Nikaya.
Okay, yeah, so there's points to like some interesting differences between the Nikayas. And usually for people, after they've sort of gotten some basic acquaintance with Buddha's teachings, when they want to learn to get like...
let me lay this down, I'll come back in, see.
Oh, that is somebody online. Okay. So if somebody wants to get like a sort of broad overview of the Buddha's teachings, looking at it from different angles, with more elaborate explanations, I suggest the Majjhima Nikaya, because there you find some of the like major suttas, particularly like the first 20, 25, 30. You skip the first one, leave the first one for last because it's very abstruse. But then you get broad overviews like the Asavis and the discourse by Sariputta on right view, different aspects of right view, the Satipatthana Sutta, 4 foundations of mindfulness, different methods of training the mind. You find that treated quite systematically in the Majjhima Nikaya. But the reason I have so many texts from the Anguttara Nikaya for this is because the Anguttara Nikaya has a lot of short texts, and I wanted to get short passages, not big suttas for this purpose. And a lot of the suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya are addressed to Anathapindika or other lay followers, or sometimes to the monks, but relating to either the lay life or with a very general application. And because the Anguttara Nikaya is arranged numerically, so it becomes somewhat easy it makes a deep impression on the mind because you get the numerical scheme.
It's also your book.
Yeah,
I can't see what that is.
The Buddha's word.
Yeah, that is what I say. Before somebody starts reading any Nikaya, then I recommend that book.
Okay, I should
Because
start there.
in that book, you see, when you start reading a whole Nikaya, there's no systematic arrangement to the suttas. They just jump from one topic to another with a rather flimsy connecting thread. But what I did was to try to use a systematic structure to classify numbers of suttas and then put them together into that anthology called In the Buddha's Words from Wisdom Publications.
Okay.
It was originally back about the year 2000, the director of Wisdom Publication asked me to compile an anthology for use in colleges. They suggested an anthology of about 200 pages. But as I started to compile, I thought, I can't leave this sutta out, we have to include that one. So how many pages does it?
480. Yeah.
480.
Double.
Not counting the with the index.
I have a question about the paramita you taught this morning.
Yeah.
About that wisdom, panya, and
About the
wisdom, panya, and the sajja, the truthfulness.
Yeah.
My previous understanding is that the wisdom is what you realize the truthfulness of the phenomena, but now you it's become two things. So
Okay.
what's the connection?
Yeah, okay, so you say that wisdom realizes the true nature of things, the real nature of things. But so the emphasis in the paramita of truthfulness is making that commitment to truthful speech.
Commitment.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like a realization.
Yeah, that the realization aspect comes under panya or wisdom.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Tusita.
Hi, Andy. Hi, here. Higher?
Oh, okay, now I see, okay.
Yeah, hi. So we took precepts today about abstaining from certain things. So the two things that I struggle with are anger and lust, particularly those two
what?
things. Anger, lust,
Yeah,
and I just feel like you see like the James Bond films where if you act aggressive in a sophisticated way, that's rewarded. Seduction of women is also rewarded in those movies as well. There are dating coaches out there too who teach you how to do that also. That's kind of hazy, right? Like, it's not exactly wrong or right, but like, I don't know, like, what would you say? What's your opinion about that? And what is your opinion about those things?
I didn't quite catch the question. You said first the things that I struggle with are anger and lust.
Yeah.
And then, did you say James Bond?
Yeah. Like in the movies, he's always like aggressive in a sophisticated way, and he always gets his man and
He always knocks
Well,
out the enemy
and
and seduces the
woman.
attractive woman. Yeah, I have to say that maybe propagates, maybe the expression would be a toxic view of masculinity. So maybe on one hand, James Bond, I mean, years ago I saw some James Bond movies that don't have a very clear, distinctive recollection of them, but he's supposed to be opposing like drug dealers, and this time was the Cold War, so he's in the British Secret Service, knocking out sort of the communist infiltrators. I think so, if I remember. But it conveys, I would say, a rather, as I say, a toxic version of masculinity. And he always has these clever contraptions, unbelievable technologies that he can use.
Clever one-liners.
Excuse me?
Clever one-liners, too.
Yeah, so, I mean, to protect one's own mind, it's good to keep a little distance from that kind of entertainment. And just look up to more inspiring and noble ideals of masculinity rather than the type who embodies, on the one hand, a slick type of aggression and also a slick type of, with the one-liner, seductive techniques. Okay, so we'll take the next question. Heather, yeah.
Thank you, Bhante. I have a question about the chant, the sharing of the merits that we've been doing here. Is that something that you would recommend that we do after our own personal practice?
Exactly. Very good question.
It's not just something that a teacher or a monastic needs to lead?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And that reminds me what I wanted to say with this list of the paramitas, or paramis, which will be sent out. Good thing to add to your regular, daily practice. Don't have to do if you want to do all 10 of them, you could recite all 10. You could use your own formulations, don't have to use the formulations there. If the one on Nekama, you don't have to do by way of becoming a homeless monastic, but you can just formulate it by way of being selfless. But you could recite all 10 of them, or 6 from the Mahayana tradition, or just choose 3 that are especially meaningful. So make that part of the practice. And then at the end, do the verses for the sharing of the merits. Even we don't see these beings, I have a real belief in them. And there was a simile that occurred to me. We have these skeptics, hard science skeptics, no such realms as that. That's just the wild Indian imagination. But this is a little bit like when I was in Sri Lanka, I had a radio with different bands. There was the AM band, the FM band, and I think 3 shortwave bands. And I used to listen to the BBC World Service. I think I was on shortwave band number 1. That's how I got my news. And then one day, I went to the place on the band where I get the BBC World Service. I didn't get it. And then I was wondering, what's happened? I'm not getting the BBC World Service. Then I realized what had happened when moving the radio, I had accidentally moved the dial so that it had slipped from shortwave band 1 to FM band to the FM band. And then this brought to mind an analogy. So somebody might be thinking, BBC World Service doesn't exist, just a product of the wild imagination. But there are different bands which get their own frequencies and pick up their own radio stations based on those frequencies. And so similarly, our minds work at a particular frequency to pick up the bands of the beings that share this world with us. But there are these other frequencies which are the levels at which the other beings operate. And so, they're at those frequencies, but they could sort of tune into our frequencies and pick up what we're doing. So when we not only with words, but with our minds, we share the merit with them, then they sort of pick up on the merits. Okay, so let me see. So I see a hand from Vivi. Okay, let me put this earphone.
Pandami Bante, my name is Vivi and I'm from North Carolina. I have a question. After we do the meditation and the chanting, we do the sharing merit, but usually I do the Patidana. Which one do you recommend and what is the difference?
By Patidana?
Yeah, there is a Patidana at the end of the Mangala Puja that usually I recite, also on my daily chanting. So I'm just wondering, what is the difference doing the sharing merit with, like what we do during the retreat with the sharing merit at the Patidana?
What Patidana means sharing merit. So what do
Yeah, but the first is different. Like punya sidan nikata sa yana nyani katanime. That was the one that I usually recite.
Okay, that's a different tradition. I'm not familiar with that. It
Oh,
doesn't really
okay.
matter. You just do the one that you're familiar with. Probably the intention is the same.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the sharing merit to the Dewa and the
Yeah,
Naga.
the wordings are just different. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember years ago, there's Achan Pasano. Now he's retired, but he was the abbot of Abhayagiri Monastery in California. He had been a monk for 40 years, and he had listened to some of my talks where I end with that verse of Akasa Tacha Bhumata. Then he asked me, what is that verse that you recite at the end of your discourse? And I thought, he's been a monk for 40 years, he doesn't know this verse? I realized, because he's coming from the Thai tradition.
Yeah, I guess this is more Thai.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just expressing the same idea in different words. So the Akasa Tacha Bhumata, I know it's come down in Sri Lanka. I don't know if it's used in other countries. Yes, so don't be concerned about that. It's really the intention that's important. Okay, so I see a few other hands here, and I see, that's Vandana. Okay.
So much gratitude for your teachings, Bhante. And today, just I would like to share. I'm barely new to Buddhism, like five years maybe, and then so I was learning from you in the Sutta studies on Saturday as well. But now this retreat is being very beneficial. Even I was having always experienced the body sensations without even going to Goenka's retreat, but I would feel them very prominently, and the mind always goes into rapture and bliss. And then this morning at 3 a.m., when you were doing this, Dhamma is present right now, you have to experiment with it. Dhamma is present right now here. And I could just feel my mind went just into my body and I could see all the sensations. And then when I thought about and then my knee started to pain, and then I could see that noble truth. This is suffering. And why suffering? Because I'm in this body. And that's why mind went so peaceful. And I could see the Dhamma right there in that present moment. And when we did this sharing the merit to my departed relatives, I could visualize my father, my mother, my brother who died. And then
I have to ask you to be concise, because
yes.
the time is...
I'm just saying that because of your teachings,
Yeah.
today in the morning, I could feel all those Dharma teachings came alive in front of me. So I just wanted to share my gratitude and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what I take the next hand is Dao.
Good morning, Bhante. My Dhamma name is Dhamma Ratana. I have a quick question regarding in one of the teaching you mentioned about the 4 times of methods to reach the other soul. The first time is the concentration first and wisdom later. Second time is the wisdom first and concentration later. The third time is both concurrently at the same time. And the fourth time to talk about contemplating on a different Dhamma topics to reach the other shore. And my mind come into, because I also know about other tradition, like the Northern tradition, is the koan method of the Northern tradition related to the 4 time of training? Thank you, Bhante.
It actually seems to be related to it. I wouldn't say that it's deliberately, consciously based on that fourth method, but this koan tradition or the watto that's used in the Chan tradition, which I'm not acquainted with through my own personal practice, but I've just read about it. So what it involves is bringing up a sort of a logically insoluble statement in order to generate a doubt, a kind of puzzlement, which one then intensifies the puzzlement. For example, does the dog have a Buddha nature? And then the master replies, Wu, which just means nothingness. Or what is the sound of one hand clapping? Or who is it that carries around this body? Or simply, what is it? And then you just take that question, what or who, and just, what is the expression, looks into it until a great doubt is created, which you have to sustain. And then something will take place, sometimes after years, in which the doubt explodes, and then that is said to be the attainment of an awakening. Yeah, so it seems to be related to that fourth method, but I don't think it's consciously and deliberately derived from it. Rather, it's something that developed within the Chinese Chan school over several centuries, probably not even in the Tang dynasty, maybe the Song, or I don't know the history, Song dynasty or later dynasties.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, the fourth one, it said, here a monk, his mind is obsessed by restlessness in regard to the Dhamma, but then at a later occasion, the mind settles down, becomes collected and concentrated, and then the path arises. What I take to be a good example of this, it's a set of verses that is found in the Therigatha, the verses of the elder nuns, the bhikkhunis. One of the bhikkhunis, her name is Siha. I think it's a set of 4 verses or 5 verses. So she says, it's been 7 years, I'm just trying to paraphrase roughly from memory. It's been 7 years since it was 7 years since I went forth, and I haven't known a moment of peace. My mind is constantly in turmoil because my mind was constantly in turmoil because of lust. And so I reflected, what use is this life to me? I can't go back to the household life. My life as a bhikkhuni is useless, so she thinks, let me go into the forest and hang myself from a tree. And so she takes a rope, she goes into the forest, attaches one end to the branch of a tree, takes the noose of the rope, puts it around her neck, and then she says, at that moment, my mind was liberated from the asaras. And then she continues, and now I am one with something like, now I am one who has reached the final goal. Now the Buddha's teaching has been done, something like that. It's Siha, S-long-I-H-A. Okay, I think we'll have to go for the meal now. And so I see a few hands are up, but...
เจริญพรค่ะ Dhamma สวดมนต์เสร็จแล้วก็จะนั่งสมาธิแล้วก็จะนั่งสมาธิแล้วก็จะเดินจงกรมไปเรื่อยๆ Dhamma สวดมนต์เสร็จแล้วก็จะนั่งสมาธิแล้วก็จะเดินจงกรมไปเรื่อยๆ 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 Dhamma สวดมนต์เสร็จแล้วก็จะนั่งสมาธิแล้วก็จะเ
we hear the gong and the wooden fish. So we can rise and we'll do 3 bows and then we'll go for the lunch. And let's see what we have in the afternoon. Yeah, please stay through the afternoon session. Excuse me? Let me just see the schedule. Yeah, it's a mudita, gratitude and sharing of merits, but we could do that sitting here. It's really a way of sort of expressing appreciation to all of the people who contributed to the program. Okay, so we can stand and do 3 bows or half bows. Oops.
Bow to Bande.
Yeah, so we come back and we should be in our seats by 1:40 again.
Please wait. Please wait. Wang Yi 在吗？王毅
We can leave these here.
OK。
Uh,
今天等一下还是要准时去用餐。
Yeah, so after this, please be sure to go to the meal promptly
中午要洗碗，
and wash the dishes after lunch.
中午洗碗的请举手。
Those who are supposed to wash dishes for lunch,